The first athlete in the world who performed more than 20 pull-ups in public was Jared Rubinstein. Then he managed to do 26 pull-ups, although not in a perfect technique. This video was published 15 years ago. Then he did it just for fun, but 7 years later, when calisthenics began to gain popularity, Jared decided to do it on his own channel officially, and he managed to perform 25 reps, which is even one less than his old record. But the technique, as you can see, has changed significantly.
Today I'm gonna break down 6 sports and find out which one makes more muscle-ups.
And first let's take a look at Cali Muscle's record as a bodybuilding representative. At 106 kg this monster has made 18 muscle-ups. To say that is a lot is an understatement. Among bodybuilders I would mark his record as an absolute record, and to be honest, Cali is more of an exception to the rule, and if it wasn't him, it's quite possible I wouldn't have considered bodybuilding in this issue at all. Cali gets from me 5 out of 10 for his technique and 8 out of 10 for quantity. Next we move on to the gymnasts. I wonder how many muscle-ups they will able to perform. On Neil Wilson's channel I found part of the answer to this question. Why only partly? Because gymnasiums usually don't have standard pull-up bars, and gymnasts usually do their muscle-ups either on bars or rings. So in one of the episodes the popular gymnast Neil and his friends performed muscle-ups still failure, where Neil himself did 10 muscle-ups with a quite strong leg impulse. His friend did 11 reps, with the same technique as the last gymnast, by my subjective feelings in the best shape among them all, did 20 muscle-ups with a really good technique.
Of course I'm sure that some current Olympic champion would surprise us, but to find a gymnast who would make such unnecessary records is simply unrealistic, so we estimate what we have.
It is not possible to give low marks to the gymnast for technique, so based on the last athlete, we give 8 points out of 10 for technique, and same 8 out of 10 for quantity, taking into account that the muscle-ups were performed on rings as well. By the way, the athlete who performed muscle-ups showed this record as well, with the muscle-ups on the bar and presses back to handstand, and did 7 clean reps. After all, the main strength of gymnasts it is not performing the same movement for endurance, but in perfecting the elements themselves, their variety and technique of performance. Back to the muscle-ups. I wanted to show you this guy who signed his video as gymnast record, which of course is very doubtful, but nevertheless the record itself is really good. The idea is to perform muscle-ups in the L-sit, while stretching your arms to the sides in the most difficult phase of the movement, as if you were performing a so-called cross on rings with the final pushing yourself to the top. The athlete performed 6 of these reps. If you have seen more in the same technique, be sure to share in the comments.
In meanwhile, we will take a look at CrossFitters and their results in this movement.
Of course, with the technique of CrossFitters, I think many will disagree. And in general, to consider this a muscle-up in the classical sense is very difficult. This exercise is more like a gymnastic skip, but anyway, the record is a record. In his video 3 years ago, Noah Olson performed 30 continuous muscle-ups on rings, in a CrossFitter technique of course. It took Olson 1 minute and 37 seconds to complete the entire record. Evaluate the technique here is very difficult, because according to the rules of CrossFit it is ideal, but we are evaluating strict muscle-ups, and let's be honest, they were not perfect, so it is 3 out of 10. But the number is certainly impressive. 10 out of 10. I'm sure even in this technique 30 muscle-ups not every athlete will perform from the above listed in this video.
Also, outside of any rankings, while I was searching information about athletes for you, I came across the results of Brandon Tucker, who performed 1,300 muscle-ups, and all this in 24 hours, and also 7,715 pull-ups in the same 24 hours.
I was interested in learning a little more about this athlete and found out that Brandon is an ex-military man who almost at one point lost his parents in a car accident, was discharged from the army for the health reasons, and also divorced his wife after 3 years of marriage. It would seem that this has nothing to do with records and muscle-ups, but as the athlete himself says, at the moment he came across a book by David Goggins, after which he decided that the best way to cope with the pain would be occupy himself with something so exhausting that there was no energy left for anxiety and thoughts about what had happened. So this incredible record is not only the result of physical work, but also of such a difficult history.
However, let's get back to the more positive part of this video and talk about what climbers can do.
And the only climber who is no longer competing but is still strong and versatile enough athlete to be used as a guide for evaluating the result of other athletes in the same field is of course Manos Midbo. In one of his videos he even performed a one-handed muscle-up. However, as a person who also did this element, I can say with certainty the technique is more important than strength. But in any case, I respect the climber for being able to perform such an unusual movement for his sport. We can definitely conclude that Manus's muscle-ups should also be at the top, and the largest number of muscle-ups in his performance, which I could find, was 10 clean reps. As Manus himself wrote, he performed them as a part of his regular training in 3 approaches, and the maximum was not checked, but approximately it could be within 15 reps. However, we can judge from what we have, and I would say that the technique here is definitely no less than 8 out of 10, and the quantity is 6 out of 10.
However, muscle-ups are a very specific exercise that must be trained, and the technique in this movement of course depends not on the sport, but simply whether you train them or not.
Therefore, as you might have guessed, in calisthenics you can find all sorts of impossible records for muscle-ups. Even girls here perform 15 muscle-ups in a good technique. What to talk about guys? For example, Maxim Trukhanovets performs 200 clean muscle-ups in one training session. 4 years ago he did 50 muscle-ups per approach with rest, and of course he set a world record of 32 continuous muscle-ups. The evaluation of both technique and quantity is 10 out of 10, simply because no one has ever done more and better. Maxim has to break his own previously set record simply because no other sport gives the same importance to this movement. Although I'm sure, even if it were true, it would be extremely difficult to make more than 32 continuous clean muscle-ups. So I'm in no way trying to artificially lower the importance of Maxim's records. It's really very cool and incredibly strong. In any case, in order to perform the greatest number of muscle-ups, you need a base of pull-ups, push-ups from the floor and bars, and of course the correct and consistent training of the muscle-ups themselves.
So just watch this video if you wanna know how to start calisthenics from 0 level and become a really strong and versatile athlete.